Here's our high. The market does not get all the way to the high, so in all likelihood, it would have missed my order. I don't, with this feed. Okay, I usually will go like 1, 2, maybe 3 pips under the high. Sometimes I actually put it through the high, anticipating a spike through. Quite often, if I do that though, and it doesn't spike through, I won't understand why I did that for the sake of a couple of pips. But I occasionally will repeat that mistake. Okay, so what we do then is there's our high. Let's just make this more visible. What you'll see is this, you'll see that the dealers will take price down, and you'll see little formations like this, these little consolidations. And when the market consolidates like this, you want to really start to see this break down. So you want to see the dealers take price. For example, I'd leave my stop the same. Then as this works itself out, once price caves in, then I would start to move my stop down. Now, in relation to some of the previous levels, we'd be looking closely at this 2060 area. You see 2060? I would really want to see price come down below 2060. At that point, once it gets below 2060, you're looking at getting paid your first, you're looking at your first payment. As you can see, once it worked below 2060, it has now been making an effort to move lower. Well, where's our next level that price can bounce on this small time frame? Okay? We've got levels right here. You see this dealing level and this dealing level and this high? You see how price came down, stalled, came back, hit the backside of this one, has now worked its way through. You see how the market is making sense all along the way based on it's not that random. Based on actual existing figures that the dealers have in their minds, especially since it's previous day's price action. Those numbers are more fixed in their minds and therefore will be used as a reference. Okay, price is here now, and obviously we've got another battleground here. 2050, so
I think you may want to update your price. It should be at 2032.
have a look. Thank you.
So it makes you feel pretty good about the short.
But to validate your theory, yes, it did make the bounce at 2045, 2050.
What's that?
I was just saying you gotta feel good about your short right now.
The thing is, sometimes you'll have days where you're more focused on other things, and I might not even look on something like dollar Swiss, and I might miss something like that. I mean, that happens, going to happen all the time, quite often, right? So it depends on how capable you are of looking at it. But sometimes like it's so fixed, I'm also pretty tied into other positions where you might miss it. And dollar Swiss isn't something I've paid real close attention to lately, but now that I'm seeing this potential base forming, I'm a little more interested in it. But I just saw this and I said that's a good example of the trade that I was explaining and the price action I was explaining earlier. And that trade didn't come on until like well into New York session. These types of trades, what will happen is because like you're always looking through, if you're doing work over here and you think the market's boring, you're always doing one thing over here, but you've always got one eye on the charts, right? Because that's how we are, that's how we're designed. And so price comes down and it just continues to move. So it moves through, comes back and tests, and it comes down to support and bounces, and continues to move through pre-established levels. This is very, very important for managing positions and getting a real sense of whether or not you want to engage in the trade, or if you, once you've gotten into a trade, whether price is supporting it or rejecting your determination of this position or of this trade. The nice thing is that you're already, if you've been following Mark stuff, you're already kind of trained to be looking at some of these smaller moves in the market. But the adjustment that is required from you here is to how to take something from a larger perspective, get the sense of the, of the larger moves, and then be able to refine it once it gets down to making your trade and managing it on the smaller time frames. So I will micro-manage it or watch price closely on the smaller time frame until I get my first payment. Then I have to decide how it is that I want to manage the trade from that point forward. After first objective, what do I do if price starts moving against me? How am I going to manage the trade? If price is moving with me, let's get to that first profit level. So now we're playing on a whole new playing field. Right? So comes right back into its range, which is potentially, it's not good for the bulls, let's put it that way. So to be bullish on this pair, it would be higher risk to enter now, and you may want to wait for a further confirmation. The thing is when you're forming these triple B reversals, the retracements are deep, but as long as it goes and establishes a low, it's higher than the last low, then the next retracement you can attempt to take along. And I really like the 79 retracement levels. It's risky waiting for it to go all that way down, but I like them because they're better risk reward.
Why is it called a triple B and what's the character?
Bull Bear Battle. Creative name, hey?
Yeah.
I need to find a marketing expert to help me think of names for some of these things. But it's in your book.
Okay.
So it's all outlined in your book with chart examples and so forth.
Okay.
We didn't really get to it. We didn't have the time to get to it on Sunday. Okay. So, and this is just a different, we looked at the same concepts earlier on the British pound US dollar, but this is just different. It's a different scenario, but it was more close. It was more reflective of what I really would look for. In fact, if I was paying attention, I would look for a trade at or around the highs, and don't know whether or not I would have gotten taken in. And I miss a lot of these trades. Like, I'll have my order in there, it comes up, not quite far enough, maybe to like an 89 fib level or whatever, and doesn't take me in and goes. But that's part of my plan. Like, I don't like to chase price. I don't like to give price too much room. If I place my entry order down there, then my stop's got to come closer, and it's got to balance even more. It's got to balance, a lot to pay me first. So in the context of things, once again, we're not trading against any trend, or we're just trading against the move, but within the overall context of the range and the trends. I always want to take you back to the very first slides that we looked at, that the market spends the majority of its time dealing in ranges. We have ranges within ranges. So if you have a range on a daily chart, you have 4-hour ranges, and you have 1-hour ranges, and 15-minute ranges, and 5-minute ranges. It can also be called fractals. So you have ranges and patterns within patterns.
Chris, can you put up the, if you're done with this, could you put up the 240-minute chart for a minute? Question.
I have one up here.
One way to do it.
Pardon me?
I say that's one way to do it.
Yeah, there's a few ways.
So you were saying you like the 79%, 76, 79. So I was measuring it from the bottom.
Don't let Mark, don't ever say that, because It's gotta be 786 around here. Although I use 79 in the round numbers.
Right.
But
786 from the bottom to the top, which actually corresponds to some nice support at the bottom, right, let me see the price.
you mean on the current
Yeah,
choppy
like,
price?
like around one,
Are you saying from this bottom? or this bottom?
the major bottom,
Major bottom.
down, no. Oh yeah, I guess that'd be the same level.
This high here?
Yeah,
Yeah. So if it came down to this 79 from here, like tomorrow, if it came down to here, I'd buy it.
yeah, and I was gonna say, that's,
Yeah, I'd buy that.
it's, we're 30, so it's only about 45 pips away.
Yeah, it's about 45, 50 pips away from today's price, but I'd buy it there.
Mhm.
But you gotta watch what's happening on euro and pound as well, and other US dollar crosses. Because remember, we're trading a US dollar cross here, and
Euro
we start to,
pound? Did you say?
I'm sorry, the euro dollar and the pound dollar.
Oh, okay.
But if we see US dollar crosses, if we see a spike down and then US dollar crosses, the US dollar rallying across the board, and I think this one has potential to move more than the others. But yeah, you got the right idea. So on that type of thing, I'd even put a limit order in there, like an overnight limit, or, you know. I often put in overnight limits, and like I say, 80% will get taken.
Now, you said,
90%.
you said if the euro and, or the pound were to rally, that would make it better or worse?
The euro and the pound would rally, we would see this one, come down to the 79 retracement.
Oh, okay, gotcha. So, because it would make this weaker.
Yeah.
That's right.
Okay. That 2080 level is pretty important. Now, that was about all that I wanted to show you. You get the idea on that one? Any questions on that? I have, we covered that option in pretty good detail yesterday, but I do have new parameters that were set out this week, new knockout parameters set this week. So let's see what the knockout level is. 109 on Aussie yen and 101 on New Zealand. The last one I showed you, we were quite near knockout, and that was a July 7 issue. So within 1 month, it would have got knocked out for profit, and would have made, you know, about the average of 900 pips a week. Close this. Okay. So in New Zealand, let's see what happened to the New Zealand dollar. We have consolidated, we had collapsed, and let's just go find out what happened exactly with the New Zealand dollar. We dropped by 40 pips. What I'm interested in looking at is how the New Zealand dollar did against the yen. 40 pip. It looks like, if we look at this in context, this looks like a really big dramatic move, you know. It's only 40 pips because the volatility on the New Zealand dollar is quite small, right? The daily ranges are quite small. And this pair is pretty bullish. We see it's already given back almost 25%. Well, let's have a look to see what the New Zealand dollar did against the yen. Let's see, Australian dollar. Australian dollar yen is pulling back, which is good. We like pullbacks, especially in aggressive trends like we're experiencing. And I also want to see the Australian dollar sideways. Let's have a look at New Zealand yen to see what happened with that pair And then we're going to check some news. I don't have the news feed, a direct news feed in here at the moment, but it's like a 60-minute chart. Well, we can maybe check foreign exchange news to see if. So the New Zealand yen has come back 120 pips. Which is good. Right to the 79 retracement level. Wild thing. So if we look at this upswing, too bad we weren't watching that. Not so much the breakout down, but we want the bounce up. Watch how quickly this thing gives back, because the market will use these moves as an excuse to drive price down and then just rebuild the carries positions. So on this swing, from this low to this high, price retraced 79%, then it rallied to 162%, then it pulled back 38%, then it just consolidated, waiting on some news event, and this might have been the Reserve Bank announcement. Let's have a look. There might be something else, some other funny business going on, because Colin has really been trying his best in an attempt to shake out the currency. And what often happens is, before I really even know what's going on, but I want to find out. Here's what happens is that Colin has been making efforts to slow the progressive strength of the New Zealand dollar. Okay? And they will use verbal intervention in various ways, and they've used manipulation or they've used intervention right through the bank, through the central bank, but they've also used it verbally. Now, once you start to do it verbally and also through the central bank, then if your currency continues to strengthen, then it becomes a little bit of an assault on the ego. Therefore, their efforts become even greater to tame the strength of that currency. We saw that happen in yen in the early 2000s. We saw a large range of attempts of the Bank of Japan to slow the strengthening of their currency, because internally they have a very accurate accounting of the effect of exports, the valuation of their currency in relation to their exports, which of course will start to impact the economy as a whole. You follow me? Yeah? Okay. So they know every day that when the currency moves from X to Y, what effect it's going to have on their bottom line trade balance. And of course, the growth and stability of the economy. So they use various forms of intervention. Now, we see price here has reached this technical level that we identified yesterday, the 162% extension of the small upswing, and on the most recent upswing, it's the 127% extension, and I'll just tighten this view a bit for you. From this low to this high, price fell and has rallied to 127% extension. Now, price has fallen right to the 79 retracement level, and I'm interested in seeing or knowing what happened here. So normally what I do is I'd probably go into the direct, like Reuters feed, or you may have a feed. You may have a feed in your dealing platform. But let's just check foreign exchange news. Let's have a look at foreign exchange news in Singapore. Let's see if there's any notes on it. There is not. Just yet. Let's see when this happened. It just happened within the last 2-3 hours. There should be some news out on it. We're obviously taking a long way around here, but one thing that you could do is an internet search on it, a Google search on the latest news. And there may be something right here. Right here, there's nothing that's come out recently, but right here, Standard Bank is saying that the New Zealand dollar may drop, or they may even hold interest rates, or probably highly unlikely that they would lower rates. In any event, we don't know what happened, but normally what I would do is I would go to the Reuters feed or to feed through your platform to determine what it was that caused that move. Okay? But potentially a good area where you can re-enter. 96.70, 97.80 is the high. Here there's still plenty of room to take some profit out before it even gets to 20, with the anticipation that it could move higher. Standing in your way there. Okay? Any questions on that? Nice bounce, 40 pip bounce so far. What I would do with the Fibonacci's now is I would just take a measurement from the high to the low. And quite often you get resistance. First resistance at the 38, and I would anticipate a lot of resistance here at the 618 and these lows here at 97.20. Definitely would need to take something out before that point if you entered here. There's still 50 pips difference between where we are now and this level of 97.20. But definitely would take something out before that, because we could just bounce and move back into a range before taking a leg higher or lower. Okay. Now, part of the strategies that I apply, of course, are the fact that if I go long here, I don't need to know what direction the market's going to go in order to make some profit. All I need is for this thing to just move up for a while at some point, even if it ends up falling. I just need it to as it jiggles around and works its way out, I just need it to rally for whatever my first target is, 20, 30, 40 pips. Okay? And then from there, make the decision on what I want to do.
Would you have been looking to sell that at the previous?
Yeah,
Yeah, it kind of looks like
that trend is way too strong. I would not stand in front of that thing.
that trend line.
I'm only looking to buy with this one. This one, if it was the pound or something that I like the volatility with, then maybe I'd sell against a trend like that. It would be a very small position.
That's why you know your pairs and what they're going for.
Yeah. This one, no, it's just the trend's way too strong.
The one this morning, just looking at it, just the bars, it looked pretty strong. But again, that's why you need to know what you're trading.
Yes. This morning, if you recall, when we read the UBS report, they said that they were anticipating a pullback in the New Zealand dollar. And I mentioned that the reason why, they didn't say why, but I suspect that the reason why for me, the reason why would be because in anticipation of Reserve Bank of New Zealand rate announcement this week, the market typically slows down, eases off, and pulls back. You know, you don't see, as we get closer to that economic report, we don't see the market just keep gunning higher or lower, okay? Usually it's like, okay, you know, we priced things in, let's just ease off until we really find out what's getting to that rate announcement. So they pull back a little bit, and we'll settle down until the rate announcement. Right? And this is the kind of thing that you'll see. So one of the reasons why this could move so fast like this is simply because liquidity, as you get close to rate announcements, liquidity really starts to thin out. So you can get a pretty aggressive move because of the thinning liquidity. And this is the type of trade where it can fall, you know, and you can just say, okay, that's nice, it fell. Now let's start maybe looking for longs. We got the rate announcement coming up, and that's you know, maybe we can start building some longs or just wait. Because the way I trade this currency pair very, very passively, I don't really day trade it. But you have to find an entry somewhere, and it's going to be, you know, if you want a good entry, you got to grind down there and find a good level to enter. Because any time that you just shoot from the hip, like a cowboy, you usually end up regretting it. Right? So right now I'm just thinking this thing could just jiggle around in this range for a little while before the rate announcement. But I like the technical bounce though. Now, if price bounces here and then rallies and then continues to fall, you'll see here that we have 127% extension right here at this low, and you can expect a bounce there as well. And then the 162% extension is down here where we are in the context of things. You have to go to a higher time frame. But you see how the fibs are all lining up? I mean, obviously these fibs are going to line up because it bounced up to 2786, and we've lined up our fibs there now, so this is going to, mathematically, it would make sense. And this one, so all along the way here, we're in a good Fibonacci environment. When price moves this quickly, you see this fall here from 97.20 to 96.40. It's 80 pips fall, which is quite big for New Zealand dollar. You'll often see this move down in gaps. If it's thin liquidity, and if you see price moving down in gaps, it is thin. Then when you see a pullback like this, the pullback can be pretty aggressive because it's filling those gaps. Make sense? What we're trying to accomplish here is I'm trying to give you a lot of ideas to help you to accelerate your understanding of the animal. And that way you make fewer mistakes along the way, or you understand your mistakes a little more clearly. So it accelerates your learning curve. And I can share a lot of the concepts with you, but then you really start to get a feel for them once you interact with it yourself. And I'm interested to see how much this is related to yen buying. So the New Zealand US dollar has attempted to make a new high and got rejected. But let's have a look to see what's happening with the yen crosses. It's grinding, yen crosses are grinding lower at the moment. I like this level here. This level at 242.90, so 245, 243, right here, to buy. Looking at our pound US dollar cross, sorry to jump around a bit, but I just want to have a look to see what's happened at the end of price action today. And we've been bouncing at levels where it's that are identified. It comes down and bounces at 206 again today and moves up to 206.21. Bounce at the figure twice today. And as you know, we bounced there back here as well. Here. And right now it continues to test that level, staying in its range. And the market is comfortable in its range. Right smack in the middle of its range right now. But I think we've seen a lot of examples that verify the concept of the FX markets being more comfortable in these ranges. Ranges within ranges within ranges. And it's very important that when you identify your entries, strategize as to how to manage your position and exit your position in and around the concept of ranges and key levels that the market has previously established, because you can anticipate moves off of those levels. Maybe what we'll do now is we can take a break, then we can cover some psychology after the break. Let's do that. Because we need you awake, otherwise this stuff might put you to sleep. Okay folks, what we'll do is, you guys have been charted to death. Take y'all for a ride in a bobsled. You've all been charted to death, so maybe we'll just throw in some psychology.
Yes.
And
Be a good break.
if you ever do get a chance to go down in a bobsled, I tell you it would be well worth your while. Probably one of the coolest things you'll ever do. It was really, really cool. Because that object has a tremendous amount of power as it goes down the track. So just to give you some of my history in the sport, I mean, I competed internationally in track and field for Canada, and then I moved over to bobsledding when I was 21. And I competed on the World Cup circuit from 84 to 98, basically 14 years on the World Cup circuit, and went to 4 Olympic Games. Wow. And bobsledding is a science of, first of all, you have the equipment, and the equipment has 3 aspects. You have the cowling, or the aerodynamic portion. You have the chassis, or the frame, and there are a lot of dynamics in the chassis. But then you also have the runner blades. And the runner blades, we would experiment and use various alloys and try to determine which alloys were best under various conditions: humidity, warm, cold, dryness, and so forth. But also the curvature of the runner was very important. The CAD design of the runner was very important, because some tracks had very tight, very dynamic changes throughout the track, while others were very open and smooth and easygoing, a lot faster, flatter type tracks. So the runner design was very, very important. And one of those sets of runners can cost $10,000, $20,000. And you can design a set of runners and they can be throwaways because maybe they're not very good. So I worked with a team, with a CAD design team in a machine shop, tool and die shop, and we designed some runners that were really, really quite outstanding. And we also did a fair bit of research with temperature and the best alloy for certain temperatures, and so that becomes our own proprietary knowledge, and we use that to give us an edge over our competitors. However, the root of bobsledding, of course, is like any other sport, is the physical aspect. it requires very powerful sprinters in order to get the object moving. The sleds weigh about 600 pounds. So we have 4 guys, there's a 2-man and 4-man bobsled. There's 2 different events, 2-man and 4-man. So basically weight to weight, the 2-man is much heavier to push because you have 2 guys pushing maybe a 500-pound sled versus 4 guys pushing a 600-pound sled. The average weight of the people in the sport, the athletes in the sport are 200, 220 pounds, maybe 190 to 200 pounds. I've lost a fair bit of weight in sport. But they're all very, very powerful, very fast sprinters. So the average guy can power clean, which is lift the weight from the floor up to their shoulders in one movement. The average guy can power clean about 280 pounds. And also be very, very fast runners. So this is a race in Germany. We're 3rd in this race at a World Cup. And that's my team just pushing off at the start. And it's very, for example, if I took 4 of you and just said, sit in this bobsled, it would take you at least 5 minutes to get comfortably in that sled. It's a very, very tight fit. The athletes are very, very, very sharp spikes, and they have big quads, and it's hard to, get into that sled, but they do it in about 3 seconds, 3-4 seconds. They all load in. And the start's very important. You have to reach your maximum speed. You have to know exactly when your last maximum powerful stride is, because if you move beyond that, the sled is now wanting to move faster than you're running, and you're actually doing what? Holding it back, okay? Because the sled wants to move forward, it's not going to until you get on that thing. Very, very precision, because races are measured in hundreds of seconds, and so hundreds of seconds at the top will affect your speed on the track and can compound at the bottom. Right? And so there are a lot of aspects, and then of course being an amateur sport, I being the leader on the team, I'm the driver, the guy at the front. Being the leader on the team, I have to take some responsibility over the marketing aspect or the promotional aspect for my team. I am a team within the national team, so the national team takes care of the national team, but if I want to really create a situation where I have an advantage with my team, I need to have it self-supporting as well. So for example, any of my projects on equipment will be done privately, because the equipment I own, but the national team will pay for my travel with the team and so forth, travel and transportation and and sort of some of the logistics around the events. But as far as my equipment goes, I pay for that. Okay, and it's quite expensive.
Is that in the sled?
That's the sled and the runner blades and anything else, your training and living and all that stuff. It's amateur sport, there's no income in the sport, so you have to make a business out of it. You're requiring sponsorship or other aspects. Now, and then the crewmen are not as marketable because the team is typically branded by the name of the driver. So the drivers then takes on some responsibility for the financial situation of the team members as well. So not only are you supporting yourself and all the equipment, and you're also trying to help out the crew. Right? So that's a basic background on that. Now, I'll show you another picture here. Give you just a couple of different perspectives on it. This is a track. I'm going somewhere with all this, by the way. This is a track in Italy. This is a track in Italy, and it's in Cortina, Italy. James Bond was filmed there on this track. And the guy died actually during filming of that movie. And in this corner, we're about 20 feet high, and you're pulling about 6 Gs, going about 120 to 130 kilometers an hour in that corner. And we, as a driver, for us, it's like we're in slow motion because we're so acquainted with the rhythm and the timing of that track. And that's our job, is to take the information every time, the physical information, every time we go down the track. We have to take that physical information and assimilate it and then use it in order to move efficiently down the track the next run. And so we literally are precisely driving down this track, trying to achieve an ultimate line, like within a certain space. Okay, but it's a rhythm and a timing and a feel for every track, and every track in the world is different. every corner is different in the world. Right? And we just have to be able to acquire this and adapt the kinesthetic sense of that rhythm. And so we'll come out of that corner, and literally we have to come down a very specific line with just the right amount of balance of pressure out of the corner to go straight down the straightaway into the next corner, very precisely. So what has happened to me is that there was a track in Cervinia, Italy. I don't know if any of you are familiar with Cervinia, Italy. It's at the base of the Matterhorn on the other side of Zermatt. And there was a corner combination on the bottom of that track that was very dangerous, called Azzurra Bianca. And there were a lot of bad accidents in the Bianca corner. And we had a World Cup race there one year, and there was a lot of hold on the track, and they were deciding whether or not they wanted to hold the race there because the equipment was now getting too fast for the track. And we went into this corner combination, and then you had to come out of Azzurra just in the perfect position, go into Bianca corner just on exactly the right line, and at just a very specific, precise point, you had to start to steer out of the corner. If you're a little bit too late, pressure was so strong it would hold you on the corner, then the sled would come off on its side. And so that's what happened to my team in the second heat of a World Cup race. We were on the Bianca corner, and it is so precise that I missed the steering point by just a fraction of a second. And at that point, I couldn't steer it off because so much pressure had built up in the corner that the sled stays on the corner, and the corner runs out, and then there's a dead air space, and then the sled comes off upside down. And there's a straightaway about 60 meters in length, and the sled goes screaming down that straightaway at 130 kilometers an hour. And the finish corner on this track is about 30 feet in height, and the sled rode up the finish corner and crashed through the lip of the corner, and the top of the sled was hanging out the lip of the corner, and it came back into the corner, hit the bottom of the base of the corner, then rolled over. And I rolled over. First of all, when we came off the corner that we crashed in, my head hit the wall and snapped back, and I was knocked unconscious. So I was unconscious the entire ride down the straightaway into the finish corner. The corner crashed through the lip. I was hanging out of the sled, unconscious, and then the sled came down, hit the base of the corner, rolled over, still unconscious, of course, and rolled over literally on my face with 4 guys in the sled. It's 1,300 pounds, 1,400 pounds. Rolls over, so what I believe happened was to try pulling my helmet off, and the chin strap from my helmet ripped into my face. And literally, my face was completely, this scar goes from here all the way down over here, and then also into my cheek on this side, and it completely had ripped it right off. This is the middle of my lip here. So I lost a good chunk of it, so they actually pulled the lower part of my face over and sewed it together all the way down to here and into my cheek, the inside. And also, the guy did a good job. Yeah. And then also my nose was broken. I had stitches across here. There's just friction burns right down to my bone. On the back of my hand, this is a skin graft now, taken from my leg, and also on my arms, I've got skin grafts as well. And I had broken ribs, broken nose, broken clavicle, a contusion in my leg. And it was pretty messed up. Okay? So, but that's the nature of the sport. And in that case, it's quite extreme on that particular track. And then just to speed up the story a little bit, 2 years later, we went back to the same track. That was 1 year before my first Olympic Games. So, we were set on the Olympic Games, and then 1 year before the Olympic Games, that accident happened. Naturally, there's a lot of teams behind me that want that spot on the Olympic team, and so they would basically effectively mentally eliminate me from the equation after that type of accident. But they found out the next year that I was not eliminated from the equation. But so a couple years later, we went back to the same track, and that year we were having a good season. We were really just starting to come up in the World Cup standings. We're having a good season, and then we had 2 races left in the season, and the second to last race was in Cervinia. And I had a very competitive team of tremendous athletes. One gentleman that competed in both summer and winter Olympic Games, summer in track and field and the winter games as well, and then but just very tough competitors. when you go to a top of a track like Trevina, if you are a pusher and you think that you could get injured, because I'm the driver and I've got the responsibility of my crew are in my hands, and I'm the driver, they're sitting in the back of this extremely powerful object. Because they'll go into corners, and the corners, so much pressure in those corners that they cannot even lift their heads up in the middle of these corners because the pressure is so strong. So it's all in my hands. Now, if you're at the top of the track, and the starting aspect is very important, and it's determined by hundreds of seconds. And when you push the sled off the start, if there's any hesitation whatsoever of the crewman, if there's any hesitation, it's reflected in the start time. Because you have to be as aggressive as possible when you start pushing that sled. Right? So that hesitation will be reflected in the start time, and then the crewmen start looking at each other saying, who's scared? Who's not pushing as well as they should be? And then you get into finger pointing and maybe some infighting. When we went back to this race, we had 2 races left in the season. We had to finish no worse than second in one race, and we had to win the other in order to win the overall World Cup. We went to the second to last race in Trevina, and on the first run, my team outpushed all of the other teams by 4/100ths of a second.
Jeez.
And which was amazing. And then we set the track record, because the question was around, will Lori's team stay in contention, because we're back in Trevina now, and this track's a dangerous track. So then what happens is a lot of some of the weaker links get weeded out in these situations, because just like trading, you focus on the task. If you're focusing on end results or any of the threatening parameters or the threatening aspects of the venture or of the task, then it's going to interfere with your thought process and how you execute through that situation, through that scenario, or through that race. Just like trading, you focus on the task, focus on the parameters, focus on the trade management, the end result will take care of itself. And managed funds, we focus on the technical aspects, the pips, we don't look at equity. The end result will take care of itself. Money will get put in the account. Okay? So we set the track record there. The town went crazy because I'm from an Italian descent, and everyone knew what happened last time, and they were quite happy for us. They were also happy because we were North American, and the sport had been traditionally dominated by the Europeans, and had gone through a long phase of being dominated by Europeans, and finally a North American has got a chance now to win the overall World Cup. So then we went to the next race and we won. And then we won the overall World Cup.
You left something out.
Pardon me?
You left something out.
Really about.
How did you overcome your own thing about going through that turn again?
It was the psychology behind that is really about just having, what you have to do is, okay, now I'm going back to this same track. And you're going back to the same track, and what would be going through my mind? Naturally, there is an ever-present opportunity for the negative thoughts or the thoughts that can cause fear and anxiety to enter into your space, right? All of this is trying to, there's a constant pressure on you for these thoughts to enter into your space. And the only way to stop that from entering into your space is by focusing on what you know best, and focusing on what it is that you need to do to execute, to move down that track as quickly as possible. So what we as drivers do is we every day we walk the track from the bottom to the top. And we walk and we study the track, and what we do is we connect with what we're studying with the track, with our feelings that we've acquired through the week and from the last time that we've been to that track. We try to connect with the rhythm and the feeling that we know of that track with what we're currently seeing, but we don't actually have the opportunity to put it all together until we push off and are actually physically going down the track. So we have to focus on all of these finite movements, but it doesn't get resolved until you're actually sitting in the sled, on the track, traveling at 130 kilometers an hour. That's when you have to piece it all together very quickly. It has to come into synchronization, right? And then you go down once, and then the next time you go down, you refine, you go through all the thought process again, and you refine all the little things, the mistakes you had made, maybe identify certain rhythms that you didn't pick up the first time, or you maybe steered too late or too soon in certain areas, and you refine that down. The next run down, you take a run, now you have more information, you take that information, you process it mentally, and then you do it again. So the next time at the track, all I had to focus on was, of course, what I knew of that track from a physical kinesthetic standpoint, and of course, having to have sound psychological integrity in order to stay focused on what was going to be most effective in the situation, rather than permitting any downside potential in any aspect to come into my space. Only way to do that is to stay focused on the task. As soon as you start thinking outcome, as soon as you start thinking profit, or how many pips it's going to move, or the exact direction and the steps the market's going to take from A to B, as soon as you start thinking that, it's interfering with your thought process. Okay? You have to focus on the action.
What about fear?
Well, fear is something that is just going to interfere with your ability to reason.
How did you handle the fear to go back down that track again after being almost killed?
It's not so much a fear. It's maybe you have some reservations. The biggest concern is the unknown. And the unknown is the information. And you don't gather information. You only know with what you've previously done in that track and what you're currently studying. The unknown is what's going to actually happen between the time that you start and the time you get to the finish. Then you have more information to work with. And that's always there's always an anxiety in and around, closing that gap between the information that you're receiving and what's going to happen when you go down the track in that next situation. So the fear is really not, it's all relative to risk, and the risks are how unprepared you are. Okay? The lack of preparation, the more risk, the more you should be afraid. Okay? So now as a driver, before I get on to some of the psychology stuff here, as a driver, you go from one mode to another. First of all, you go from a very, very aggressive pushing mode, and very dynamic, very aggressive race car-like pushing mode. Then, when the driver jumps into the sled, you have to go from that aggressive mode to complete relaxation and connecting yourself with the track and all of your facilities, your steering ropes, and the rhythm of the track. You have to get into the rhythm of the track immediately. So you have to completely change from one psychological mode to another as soon as you jump in the sled. And you're feeling the team load behind you and making sure everything is okay. So, moving on.
Is there any communication with your team members once you're in the sled?
No, there is not.
I didn't think so.
No. The team is just talking to themselves and praying. But the team, although they're tucked in this sled and they're in this very powerful object, they know exactly where they are down the track. They know the rhythm of every track. They know exactly where they are, and they can feel if I've gone into a corner too late or too soon, or if maybe there's a slight change of pressure that they're not used to in a certain corner, and they'll say, oh, look what happened in corner 7 there. I'm like, look, just shut up. I know what happened. You know what you worry about, I'm the driver. Nothing worse than having a crewman telling you what you did wrong, because you already know what you did wrong. It's like, the conclusion. See, like when you conclude a trade, you already know what you did wrong. Well, the account's going to tell you so. How do you like that? And the loss in your account tells you.
Well, how many runs would you make on it before the competition? If you go to a new track, are you there a month before? Or?
No, just we have limited number of runs. We only have literally about 6 to 8 runs total, 2-man, 4-man. Then we race 2-man on Saturday, 4-man on Sunday in a typical World Cup. Then you show up the next track. And then you drive 8 hours, 10 hours, 15 hours to the next track and do the same thing the next week. No time off at all. 17-hour days, work, physical work, psychological work, equipment work, sprinting training, weight training, up and down the track, all day long.
Wow.
They say that's for amateurs. How could that be for amateurs? 17-hour
Well, there's no market for it, right? So, I mean, in Germany there's a big market. You're on TV, several times a week because they show the race live and then tape delay and then they show it throughout the week. So there's a market for it there. But, you know, here there's no market for it. You're effectively an amateur sport because if there's no market or no interest in it, your kids can't go down the street and do it. Like you can't, it's not easily accessible, and it's not that, you know.
It's not like hockey.
It's not, you know, you can't go down the street and play it and then,
It's not like if you were on the Canadian hockey team.
in Canada, you just go to your backyard, play in a rink, and you know, it's available, everyone's familiar with it, they've done it, you know. So, but yeah, it's tough work, hard work. And basically, I was 35 years old, retired from sport, and a number of other events happened in my life, and there I was with nothing. And now I'm 35 years old, starting where all my peers started when they were 22. I was behind by, you know, 10, 15 years. I did squeeze college and university in. I squeezed university in during the early phases before my first Olympic Games. And that, but I love trading, so. And like I said, you know, I was just saying that to Don here, I get questions about the fundamental aspects. And I've never taken in a university economics class, nor in a university mathematics class. That's why I failed. So let's talk about psychology now. And this stuff, I just sat down and just kind of came up with it. Obviously, I've read, you know, like articles, and I read Mark Douglas's book on psychology. I haven't read any others. I read Market Wizards. But, so hopefully this makes sense to you. The realm of trading psychology is omnipresent once the decision to engage in any financial market transaction is made. Therefore, anytime you're placing finances at risk, whether it be it real estate, some other investment, trade, and so forth, trading psychology comes into effect and starts to affect your decision-making process. The thing about trading is quite often it's highly geared or it's volatile, and therefore it has more dramatic impact on your psyche because of the volatility and the gearing, as you see shorter-term equity swings, and that of course can cause a lot of emotional gyrations. As opposed to real estate, for example, where the curve and the volatility is much slower in nature, and it's more of a fixed asset. Therefore, it has less psychological impact and as like an investment. But now with online trading, you can actually see your equity moving, and that also has a psychological impact. When we trade watching pips. You know, I mean, we know our position sizes, but we watch pips, we don't watch equity. Because it's a game of getting pips within the confines of the parameters within which we're trading. Right? Knowing yourself, understanding how you're likely to behave under various circumstances. Understanding how you are likely to behave under various circumstances. Now, you know that, let's say you have a relationship with an individual or a new relationship with an individual, and you get to understand this person as a human being, but then all of a sudden a trial comes into the relationship, or an unforeseen circumstance or situation, and then this person who you thought you knew responds in a manner in which that you never understood about the person in response to this trial or this situation. And all of a sudden you're like, wow, I didn't know that about that person. And you have to know how you're likely to respond to that type of situation. Because different scenarios will elicit a physical and emotional response from you. Right? So the more highly geared you are, the price moves in a certain way that is undesirable, it will elicit or attempt to elicit a response from you. Okay? And as I say, it is directly related to the affordability of the risk that you've taken on that position. Direct correlation. The challenge is that the market circumstances will be unique on every occasion, thus testing your ability to integrate previous market experience and understanding of oneself as it pertains to your trading psyche. So, although we identify patterns and repetitive behaviors about the market, everyone will continue to be unique. And those of you who have read Mark Douglas, Trading in the Zone, this is sort of, he talks a little bit about this, but you as an individual have to have the ability to integrate what you understand about what the market has previously done or its patterns, and yourself and how you're likely to respond to its behaviors, because ultimately you're trying to create a mesh between the two, or a link between the two.